everybody, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Joey Evans.
I'm Chris Yee.
I'm Z Garcia.
Today we're taking a look at Ticket to Ride Legends of West, or to be more specific, Ticket to Ride Legacy. This game designed by the original designer of Ticket to Ride, Alan Moon, and then by Rob Daviau and Matt Leacock, who worked together and designed Pandemic Legacy. So this came with some pretty good credentials coming in. Also, it's made by Days of Wonder. Just good credentials across. Big, giant game here. And this is a game, if you don't know what a legacy game is, it's a game that you are going to change permanently. Right. This is a 12-game system. You're going to play through 12 games of this, and by which at the end, your board and your world will be different than ours are in some way. And then when it's over, at least in this particular legacy game, not all legacy games, you can play it more. Now, this video is not going to have a lot of spoilers in it. I should say not. We're going to try to have no spoilers in it. Everything we show you is stuff that's already available online, but we're going to talk about our experiences with the game. So I'm going to show you a little bit about how the game works.
Fresh out of the box, like literally.
Right, I recorded this back when we first got the game out because I didn't want to mess it up and accidentally show you guys stuff. So here we go. We'll be right back. So this looks like a regular Ticket to Ride style board, but there are some changes here, and I'm going to talk about what you'll see in the first game. So you'll have a bunch of train cards here, and the train cards are beautiful. There are symbols on these cards, but those symbols at the beginning of the game don't mean anything. There are still wild train cards, and this deck is here. But into this deck, you're going to shuffle some newspaper cards, which look like this, and the number of newspaper cards is based on the number of players. Other than that, the game is very similar. Each player has 56 trains, but for game one, you're only going to use 20 of them. You'll also notice the board has puzzle piece sections here. Read into that what you will. This is what you have at the beginning of the game. So this plays very similar to a Ticket to Ride game at the beginning of the game. Everyone gets some tickets. You'll notice some colors here on the side that might come into play later on. But these tickets, if you connect them at the end of the game, these two cities, you'll have points. If you don't connect them, you will lose the points here. As a side note, there's no point track in this game. Instead, you will be spending points. At the beginning of the game, players get 5 points. You'll get points for doing things. You do not get points for connecting two routes. On your turn, you will either draw cards, draw more tickets. You'll draw 3 tickets and keep at least one of them. Or you'll place trains on the board. When you draw tickets, you can draw 2 tickets that are face up here. They are immediately replaced. If a newspaper comes out at any point, that newspaper goes to the discard pile, and then the top event card comes out. Now, I don't want to spoil the events for you, so I'm just going to show you 2 events that come out in the very beginning. This one here says when this card's visible, before drawing a train card, you can discard all the cards and draw 5 new. And this will stay in effect till another event card comes into place. Then there's this one, which is like an immediate effect, which just says when this card's drawn, anyone connected to Lewisburg here immediately gets 5 points. Now, at the end of a game, jumping ahead, the loser of the game gets to take one of the cards that was played, one of the event cards, and discard it. It's out permanently for the campaign. So that's kind of interesting. Players can discard sets of cards to connect routes here on the board. But like I said, you don't get points for them. You're just doing that to complete tickets. If you connect to a major city, doesn't matter if you connect to more than one, you'll draw the top card off the top of the deck into your hand. And this is very new, if you play a set of trains that matches your color, so let's say the red player plays some reds on the route, you activate your company card, which at the beginning of the game gives you 2 coins every time you claim a red route. So the red player is kind of incentivized to play red trains if they possibly can. That's pretty much the only differences here in the game. At the end of the game, which ends when one person is down to 2 or less trains, everyone gets one last turn, and then you're going to get points. You'll have collected some points from the game, mostly from playing your own tracks or maybe event cards like the one I showed you. You get points for connecting routes, or you'll lose points for not connecting routes. But you'll also get points for how many plastic trains you have remaining. There's a little chart right here. So you'll see this chart. It says if you have no trains left, you get 16 points. If you have 11 or more trains left, you get no points. And then everything else is in between. There's all kinds of other things that can happen. You'll see these are the 2 rules that the game starts with. More stickers will be added as time goes by. So that's kind of a basic thing. There's all kinds of legacy stuff that will be added. Each player has their own box here, and inside one part you're going to put the cards that you'll keep from round to round, and in this part you're going to put some things that will come at the end. Most notably, a score sheet where you'll keep track of, you know, your points for each game. How does that affect everything at the end? Well, you'll have to wait and see. But this is a general game. What I just showed you is basically game number 1. There are immediate changes after game number 1, which I shan't spoil. Let's get to our thoughts. Okay, before we jump into this, where does everybody stand on just straight up Ticket to Ride? Like, for me, it's one of my favorite games, straight up.
Yeah.
You're the same?
I like it a lot, yeah.
I enjoy Ticket to Ride. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorite games of all time, but I certainly enjoy it.
It's up there because of the expansion maps. You know, some of those expansion boxes change things up and make it a little bit more robust. Basic Ticket to Ride is good. I really enjoy it. I'm probably with you, but like Pennsylvania puts it in my top 100.
Got it. Okay, yeah. I get that. Well, if you're with Chris or is that, I think you'll like this because this is going to add things without spoiling that are going to feel like expansions. The biggest change in the base game of this, and it's a change that I've been really thinking about because I mentioned it to you guys, is how they got rid of points around the board and give you coins that are points. And you start with 5, but you don't get points for putting down routes. Instead, you get points at the end of the game for how few trains you have, which is at most 16. And that's a big difference than the regular game in which you can get 15 points for putting out 6 trains. So you could get, I don't know, in an average Ticket to Ride game, I'm getting anywhere from 50 to 90 points just on the routes I put out.
Sure.
Here you get a max of 16, at least in game 1, on that. And to that end, it makes your concentration on the tickets and other things that might show up a bigger deal. And I wonder if I like that better than base Ticket to Ride.
It's a very clean way to do it, that's for sure. You do not have to do the put out something and then score me. Hey, can somebody score? Hey, move me. You know, you can just sort of go, you know?
Yeah.
And then tally all of that at the end of the game. Now, I know some people like to do that anyway in other Ticket to Ride games, but it is a bit of a hassle to have to go, okay, let me count them all. Okay, 2 points there, 4 points there, that's so that's 15. You know, having to do all of that at the end of the game can be a drain in regular Ticket to Ride maps. This is a nice system. Yes, it changes the focus. Whereas, you know, if I can do 2 2s, that is not really any different than a 4 length.
Right.
That used to be a different thing. Now it's not. Right?
I would argue it's turn efficiency, right? So it's not a perfect one-to-one representation, but if you are building more longer routes, you are probably going to run out your trains sooner and have more of those end game points for running out, you know, having fewer trains left.
Yeah.
I think it's a good representation. I don't think it's a one-to-one, but I think it cleans it up because, as this is a legacy game, more things do get introduced. You look at that rule book for the first time and you're like, cool, more rules are coming. Like, you're very aware of that. So having this much cleaner system is good because more stuff, there's going to be more upkeep on turns in the future.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree. That was my least favorite part of Ticket to Ride, is that whole, I got to make a longer route. I want to go there, but I guess I can go the longer route, you know, rather than go. But this fixes all that. It lets you focus on so much more of the game. As more things come out, more things that are, for me, more fun than worried about that all the time. That's what I like.
Yeah, this is interesting because in regular Ticket to Ride, you put out a single train connecting Portland and Seattle. I always do that in Ticket to Ride. You need to connect those two if you're going to do routes over there or whatever. And it always felt like you were like, oh, I put out one train.
Right.
But this fixes it a little bit with that. But the other thing are those big cities. And a lot of these short routes end in a big city. So it's very satisfying to play a red card, put out the train, draw one off top of the deck. I love that. It's like I haven't lost anything.
I know.
Well, especially if, and I was the red player, it's funny to use red as the example. If I played red on a red route, woo, bonus. And, and then I get another, to draw that card off the top of the deck. That's so satisfying. It's a small little incentive, but yeah, I'm going to do that.
The grabbing the card is just, for some reason, when I play my trains, I used to always feel like I'm not wasting a turn, but I'm not getting those more trains. I'm like, should I just grab more and hope for the best? But then if you play your trains and you get that one extra card, it's like it could just cascade into another turn next time, you know?
Right.
I like that a lot.
There's more playing than there. A lot of Ticket to Ride games, sometimes for the first 30 turns, I
a lot of
draw
drawing.
cards.
Yeah.
In this game, in game one, and in more than just the first game, on my first turn, I connected routes.
Yes, you
Yeah.
play
That
more, yes.
almost never happens to me in normal Ticket to Ride.
Right.
Because I don't want anyone to know where I'm going. I'm trying to be efficient by drawing cards. So that is a big change. The other change in here that we can talk about is the events. And
yes.
I really like those.
Yeah, I do too. And hate those.
Because sure.
They're game changer, which I do like. Yeah.
Yeah, they do interesting things, and I don't want to spoil them for you, let you find them on your own. And more events will join that pile as the game goes by, and events that are specific to things that are happening. But the events, they're going to come up at a reasonable time. You're not sure when they come up. Sometimes they come up right after each other. Sometimes one sits there for a while. But they're going to change. They're not going to be there forever. And they sometimes change what you're doing. Sometimes by knowing an event is in the deck, you'll play differently, and there's
Yes.
one that's really funny
Yes.
but also you get to choose the events that the loser gets to pull one out, and that's you might have lost the game, but it's such a satisfying feeling.
You're like, I don't want to deal with this again.
Oh,
Yes.
you like this event? It's gone now. It's just, I love the ebbs and flows of this. The events cause it, so many different things give it to where it'll go, and when you feel like it's going like this, something happens, you're like, whoa, it could be the event card, it could be something else. That makes a great game where it's just, those peaks are great.
You get that story pushed back into it, you know what I mean? Because it's Ticket to Ride.
Right.
It's not, there's many legacy games where adding story is very easy, you know? They are very thematic. This is based on Ticket to Ride, not one of the most thematic games of all time. And so they need to, push more storytelling into it. I think that system does a very good job of carrying some of that load.
There are so many memorable moments that came up. There's story that's written in there. Yeehaw, Old West, right?
Yes.
Yay, ha ha ha. But the amount of story is not overwhelming. Very little reading and
Yeah,
stuff.
there's very little reading if you don't like that.
But the story that they put in there, and this is one of the best parts, leaves room for us as players to kind of fill in the gaps and make funny
We
situations
were definitely
happen.
old westerning it.
Yes,
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
Oh
yes.
my goodness, yeah. And then when you have that feedback too of the event cards coming up, you're like, "Woo, we're gonna get them," or like, "Oh yeah, not this again. You got." I
Right.
love when those moments come to life, and it's not because the game says in 3 paragraphs you got. Like, no, that was from us,
Yeah.
but because the game set it up. That was the set to our spike.
I agree. And it does a really good job also. This is not a spoiler, but I like that this is one of those legacy games that very smartly gives you a little something to do at the end of every game,
Yep.
setting some things in place, getting ready for your next session, and then a little, very short setup at the beginning of the next game. Like read a card, shuffle in a couple of things, go. There's not this like, okay, game 4. Here we go. Read, shuffle, prepare, do the thing. You know what I mean? It's
Sounds
like
a little pointed, but yes.
no, it's just nice that they know how to, their cadence, they figured out, these guys have done this a lot. They figured out the perfect cadence for how much can you do at the end of a session that I'm not overwhelmed,
But it gets
and
you
I'm like ready
hyped
to be
for the
done,
next one.
I'm hyped, and then how much can you do at the beginning of the next one so that I'm not like, let's play. That's really well done. They nail that feeling.
They really did.
So, about the spoilerific stuff, we can't talk about it, but I can talk a little bit about what I thought about it. This game, so Pandemic Legacy, which this will be compared to, I bet, to some, we played, I think, 17 games, but Pandemic Legacy was between 12 to 24 games.
Yes.
And in fact, in Pandemic Legacy, if you lost a game, you replayed the exact same game again. You would have played at least twice. That's why
Yes.
there could be 24 games. And the games, they made changes throughout the series, some big changes, but sometimes you would set it up and they were like, it's the same. For this one, every game is different. All
Yes.
12 are different. Now, they're not like radically different. They're building and changing, but the game progresses at a very good pace. The first games are faster than the later ones, but I'll tell you what, I so much enjoyed all the content. I wish we could talk about it more.
I know.
I will say this, the first box we opened is still my favorite thing that we opened.
It's a great moment.
It was just, I was not expecting what was in the first box.
Yeah.
But I will say there was stuff, even all the way up to then, I was like, so that's in this game? All right. And I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'd open up a part of the. we can discuss that soon, right? The map is clearly a puzzle.
Yes.
And more of the map
There's
is good.
more map, yes.
Okay. Whew. Sometimes you open up a part that sounds exciting, and then other times you open up one like, yeah, we'll see. And then you still open up something that makes you go, oh, cool, yeah, all right, I'm all in. I think about half of those reveals were like really exciting. Mm-hmm. Almost half of them were also like, oh, dip, I'm in. And then one I was unsure about. And I think that there's one module, one addition that I was okay with, okay to favorable with, but I thought it was kind of the weakest of all the new fun legacy things that happen. But like,
If it's the same one I'm thinking of, I was still amused by it.
I was amused by it, yeah.
And I like the finishing of it a lot.
But a lot of story, a lot of our fun
Yes.
situations came because of that.
I agree.
I will say, this is a slightly negative note, I guess, but I will say that this does, this is a tricky thing for legacy games to not end up feeling like, hey, we have a game that, yes, changes from session to session, but the main change is because we're putting in a module. You know what I mean? We're like, okay, in this game you have this module. Oh, next game, another module. And it sometimes feels like they just sort of reverse engineered a complex game and removed pieces and then spoon-fed them back to you over sessions. I'm not saying this is that, but I'm saying it dips a toe in it. It does feel like each of these pieces you're talking about that you reveal is kind of a module.
Mm-hmm.
But the game is not linear, really.
It's
And
not.
I think that's brilliant, actually.
Yeah.
It is very good, but that actually kind of reinforces my module idea. Because whenever you play a modular expansion to a game, you can pick whichever ones you want in whatever
that's
order
true.
you want to. So, again, it's not a big negative. I'm just saying it does still manage to not break that mold that I've seen in other legacy games. That feeling of, yeah, okay, so it's the game, and then you're adding pieces. It's like you open this expansion next and play with it. Now open this expansion and put it in there. You know what I mean?
Right.
But that's a minor, sort of through the looking glass kind of comment.
I also want to applaud them, I think, and again, we can't talk about it too much without going to spoilers, but I think this is the best of any legacy game, best ending. Like, there's always people who say, I don't want to play a game and I don't want to play it only 12 times. You can play this fully. I mean, you're not going to have all the content from the game in it, but there's a full game of this that you can play forever afterwards.
So you're saying not ending as in like the finale, you mean like ending like end game state. This is still something you would play again and again.
Yes, you not only can you play it,
You'd want to.
you'd want to, I think. As opposed to, there's people who say you can play Pandemic, which is, it's nonsensical. You have to you're reach around, pat yourself on the, grab something behind you you have to do weird things. And you might end up with a weird board. And you might end up with things that just don't work. The only one I can think of that's done it, Machikoro Legacy did it okay, but that was barely a legacy game.
Right.
And I don't know how Aeon's End with that one. Could you play afterwards?
It's a mess, unfortunately.
Yes.
Well, there's the Stegmeyer one. Charterstone, you can do it.
But even that one, you could set things up, but just not as efficient.
Sure.
This one, I thought it worked out well.
Yes.
We also had a great campaign of this. I had a blast doing this.
Yes.
I did
We
too.
had amazing things. And this is not a spoiler, I guess, but we scored over 1,000 points, right? Lots of points. Points. And these two tied. Unbelievable.
After 12 games, after focusing on big points in game or big end of campaign
Different
bonuses.
stuff, yeah, fully different stuff. There are whole things, entire aspects of this game that you'll discover that Chris very much jumped into and I never did.
And then
No.
vice versa.
And yeah, vice versa, right. It's just wild. So, yeah, can't complain about balance there, you know.
And it wasn't, like, the spread wasn't huge either amongst all four of us.
No, I felt like we had. I
We were
wasn't like
making fun of
embarrassed
Joey.
by our scores.
No, our score is no.
No, I wasn't. I thought we came in close, but I was just. I'm normally against a tie, but that was just that's a
was
one
great.
in a million thing, really, or one in a.
right.
It worked out well, but it was a
great.
satisfying end. We ended, and it was neat to see a competitive legacy game do well.
Yes.
Because so far the best ones seem to be co-ops, just because of a lot of things that go on.
Right.
Yes.
To have a competitive legacy play this well. So I have no idea what people are going to rank it. So go ahead, Chris.
All right. Oh, whew. It's a 9.5 for me. This is so fun. My one negative, and I think that this will be a negative that people will share, is that about halfway through the campaign or so, once you introduce enough of the modules, they start stacking, and you start feeling them stack. I take one turn where I build a route, and I trigger a few different things, and they kind of will trigger in a sequence, and you might miss one, and it might be partway into the next player's turn and go, oh, I forgot that I built into a big city. Can I get the top card? And because so many other things are happening. One of my favorite things, though, that resolves that is that some of those things will naturally just kind of phase out as they get used up more. I'm talking so cautiously.
It's so difficult to
Yeah, some things get resolved. You know what I mean? Like that. So even though there's new things that get introduced, they have a nice way of easing out. So by the time it was our last game, it was a little bit more pure again. And so I thought that arc was really satisfying. The actual finale of the game was fun too. I think that what this game does story-wise, without being too heavy-handed, but also not being too self-serious. Some legacy games are so self-serious.
Yeah.
This one's zany and kooky. From the get-go, I think it was the second map we revealed, we were like, got it, this is the direction they're going.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like Clank zany or.
No, but
you
that's
know.
a good point. That this is not going to be like heavy. This is going to be yeehaw old west kind of stuff. Yeah, and that's good. I'm glad they went that route. I'm glad they went with that feeling. Yeah, I agree. And I agree with that feeling of in the middle there. It gets a little draining. I'm giving it a 9. I really, really enjoyed this game. It's fantastic. Just so fun. My only complaints again are yes, I do find that some of that it got a little slow. It got a little hard to chew through in the middle of the entire 12-game campaign, somewhere in there. And this might not happen for you, based on the order in which things unlock for you and or, again, resolve. You might not encounter that feeling. And then the big game that feels like little modules sort of thing, some of them I liked more than others, but because, of course, right? So that's why it gets a little bit of a ding for me, but I had an absolute blast playing this game, and I recommend it wholeheartedly. If you like Ticket to Ride, you have a dedicated group of folks you want to play, a few games with, good night. You're going to have a fantastic time with this. You're going to love it.
This is a hard one for me to rate, and in some ways because there's rating a game and there's rating the experience. Because with the legacy games, I tend to rate them higher because of the experience.
Sure.
Right.
Well, if you then say, well, is that your favorite game? I'm like, I don't know if that's my favorite game that came out like ever, but it was one of my favorite experiences. It's a weird mix.
I get that.
Take it out on the count. I'm saying 10. I really liked it. I had a great time. I love Ticket to Ride, but like Chris, Ticket to Ride is fun for me, and I love it a lot. You start throwing in those expansion maps, and I'm in.
Yeah.
That's what this did. This is a whole lot of cool stuff. Fun theme. And I'll put my money where my mouth is. I will get a copy of this when it comes out and play it again with my family. That's how much I liked it.
Think about playing with Wendy. Think about picking up another copy.
And this game does a good job that I can do that and not have an advantage. I think.
Yes.
I really do.
I think that's true. I think
That's
you're right.
interesting. And there's one really cool thing that they did about that I was very impressed with.
Yes.
For the actual finale, yeah.
Yeah, I was very impressed with that. So I can play through it again, and that. And I also want to say there's a few moments. We all had these little moments in the game where we did something really cool that just felt amazing.
Yes.
And I felt amazing when someone else did it.
Yeah.
Because it was just neat to see them do it.
You
Even
share
if it
that
was
victory.
super lucky. But
So lucky.
still amazing. Like, those are cool moments. I remember those. One person talked about their moment for, like, the next 6 games.
I don't know what you're
Still
talking
talking
about.
Okay, for me, Ticket to Ride is one of those. I love the game, but it's one of those. If you had asked me what game needs a legacy, it would be really far down the list. I mean, Clank.
Really? I would have picked it in my top 5.
Well, for me, Clank makes sense. You know, you're doing dungeons, pandemics, like, oh, we're solving, we're fixing all this stuff. But then this one, you're building a train. I'm like, oof. But they did things in this that make you go, oh, yeah. I mean, when you open it, you're like, oh. And it gets you that moment where you get excited to play the next game because there's that new element in there. Now, I do think some people look at Ticket to Ride. There's a whole thing in gamers like, oh, I don't play Ticket to Ride anymore. This is for gamers. This has some things in there that make you go, wow. Now, I will agree with Chris and Z that there are moments that towards the middle of the game that you'll do something and there's so many cascading things that you could do, you could easily forget those. But that tapers off. And I think it's worth it. But again, the experience this creates, the world this makes, I'm coming at 9.5. This was incredible in the fact that I am going to play it again. And for a legacy game, that says something. That's the fact that you want to play it again because I want to play certain times again and say, I can do better, I can get this, and I want to see people's faces as you open those boxes and you're like, oh, didn't expect that, did you? It's really good. So this has the moments, So
I will
really
say,
love
you
it.
said that this is like for gamers, and I agree with that, but I also think this eases you into a lot of what's
Right.
happening. So I think if you play Ticket to Ride and you're like, that's your level, that's your comfort zone, is Ticket to Ride, I still think you get away with playing
Yeah.
this.
I think you could not play Ticket to Ride and play this.
Yeah, they ease you into a lot of what's
They
going
do.
on. None of it is super heady, I would say.
No.
And they ease you into it. So it's got mass appeal. I really do think that. I think
Me
this
too.
can go into a lot of game groups.
And the fact that I'm sorry to jump, but the fact that it starts off, game 1 already is different from any other basic box of Ticket to Ride is so gratifying. If you're someone who says, I've played Ticket to Ride hundreds of times, you'll still get this and say, from game 1, oh, cool.
But
That's
here's
great.
the thing. They say in a book, you need to hook somebody with the first paragraph or whatever. This one, after the first game, we all just went, yeah. And that's
agree.
what it needs.
A couple other things that I want to do a shout out. There was a funny joke in Florida that I just thought was funny. Anyway. But Joey was not able to be there for all the games. All right, you missed a couple games, and Mike filled in for him one
Yes.
time.
For
'cause
one
Mike wanted to see
time,
it.
another time we played with just 3 of us.
Right. And it works out okay. They
Right.
handled that fine. I was impressed with that. It was.
Yes.
I don't think you could miss 6 games. You would feel bad about like missing most of the experience, right? But he was able to come back in and just jump right on the ball. So keep that in mind. And I think it also looks like it would scale really well. I think for 2 players it'd be
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yep.
You will want a dedicated group, though.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, you don't want to switch in and out
No.
all the time.
Jumping in at game 8 would be a difficult experience,
Yeah.
I think. Even for me, who's, I'm a gamer. And you're like, okay, well, here's
Yeah.
here's 6 extra things you need to be aware of. Woo! Right? So you want that dedicated group.
Well, there you go, folks. That is Ticket to Ride, Legends of the West. Get it? I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Joey Evans.
I'm Chris Yee.
I'm Z Garcia.
And you want to hear more about it? I'm going to get beeped here, so no, we're done.
Choo-choo.